Thank you everybody for coming today. Sorry about last week, but once they scheduled the department luncheon, I just felt it was important for all my colleagues to be able to go. I mean, I was all ready to have class, but you know, it was important that they all get a chance to go to luncheon. So I'm gonna double time it today. I'm gonna try and not talk too fast, but we should be able to get it all done by quarter after. Okay. Other comment is that I have to pick up my daughter from college next Wednesday, so I will not be able to be here at the last class. Faye is going to be presenting, so she'll be wrapping up the class next week with you guys. So, all right, here we go. Lecture 9 and 10, post-award and grant management issues. Okay, so we've done the grant. We've waited all these months to hear. We got a letter from the PO. We're going to be funded. Now, what do you do? Well, the first thing you're going to wait for is the notice of award. After you've done all that work, the PI does not get the notice of award. I mean, his name is on it, but the university is awarded the monies. So it's a legally binding document. It's granted to the university. That letter is like a 4 or 5 page letter, and it contains all the specifics about your award. It includes data and fiscal information. It's got the grant payment information. It's got the name of the PO and the grants management contact, and it's got the terms of the award. So this is a sample page. This is like page 1. Like I said, Dave Andy's name is up there, but you'll see that under the title Brenda Egan is named. So the grant award is actually to the university via the signing official. It states, you know, dear business official, and it says, you know, you've been awarded this amount, and that's total cost for just year 1. So you get one of these letters every year with the annual funding named on there. And then further down, it shows you what they're saying you'll be funded for all years. So he must have had something extra in year 1, some equipment or something that came to that 391 total, but all following years are going to be at 378. Again, this is total cost, and it's reflecting your overhead as well. Down below it has fiscal information. Somewhere along the line you might be asked for the FDA number or whatever, so you can always find it on this document. And then you've got your RA number, you know, so any numbers that they're looking for would be contained here. Lower down it shows you the terms of the agreement. I suggest everybody read this, but you're never gonna, you know all the specifics. This is RSP's job, so they know all this 45 CFR Part 75 and whatever, and you know what that means for obligations we have. And then the bottom of the page shows you the contacts at NIH. It gives you the name of your grants management specialist, and then the program officer. And again, it shows you a breakdown of your direct costs, your indirect costs, and your total costs. So, you know, it's handy to keep. It's good to keep this handy. It's important information. And again, I suggest, you know, the people involved in the grant and particularly the PI review this. So one of the things it says that we are under FDP. So what does that really mean? It means the university is granted some privileges that they can make some basic decisions on things, such as, like at the below I say, it gives us the option to change the budget within 25%. So if you had people you were going to pay on the top half of your budget and personnel or whatever, and now you don't want to hire a technician because you really need extra supplies, so you want to take that $50,000 from the top and put it in the bottom, we are allowed to do that automatically because we have FDP privileges. Some of the other things is that it gives us a 90-day authority. We've talked about pre-spending. This is again one of these FDP rules. So you can actually, when the PO said you were going to be funded and you needed to start maybe putting advertisements out or whatever to hire a postdoc or whatever, you can actually get an advance account and start paying for some of those things. It allows us, the university, to grant us a 1-year no-cost extension. We still have to apply to RSP for it. We just basically send in a letter through Whisper, and it's automatic. If you need additional years, you do have to write to NIH for additional no-cost extension years. And it allows for automatic carryover on your most basic grants, not your program grants. So if you have 30,000 left over from year one, FDP rules allow you to carry it over to year two. You don't have to reapply for it. And again, I'm talking federal, I'm not talking all the other agencies. Okay, so this is a sampling of an email you'll get once we do a setup in a Whisper record, and we get your animals in and your human subjects in, and everything's taken care of. This is the email that everybody's waiting for. Do I have a, no. So down here at the bottom in bold, it shows that you're being assigned an account number and the funding for it. So it's a 144, which means federal, and then that's the new account number. So now you can start spending. So that's the letter you're waiting for. So we've kind of discussed this before. We're talking about an award life cycle. So I've been talking, submitting grants via this life cycle. Now we're kind of really talking about the latter half, and we're talking about post-award. So we've done the prepare and submit. Now you're at the point where the award is being negotiated. Basically, you're waiting for federal. You're just waiting for the notice of award. So now we're, talking about getting the setup. And then what do you do to monitor and watch your accounts and eventually close out? So what is award management? It's the day-to-day activities to assure you're compliant with the terms and the conditions of the award. So from the moment you get the award to the moment you close out, you have to know how you're spending appropriately, that you're spending the right proportions and how your budget went in. That you're keeping receipts, that you're filing the documents you're supposed to do. You're trying to, do good bookkeeping for that award. Oh, just a little thing came at the bottom. Okay. As we talked about with preparing a budget, post-award management follows the same kind of guidelines. You've got to make sure that for post-award, what you're buying is reasonable, allocable, allowable, and consistently applied. So we talked about, whether you bought something really super expensive or not, and it depended on the usage, really not on the cost, and so we've kind of gone over these, and because of time, I'm not going to redefine them again. Why is responsible award management important? Well, first of all, you've got to develop trust between your PO and NIH and your colleagues and everybody. Future awards depend on you being a good bookkeeper and following the rules. Audit findings and cost disallowances. There can be criminal, civil, and administrative penalties if you don't follow the rules of compliance. How do I track my accounts and watch for salary for research personnel? What about when the end is near? How do I close a grant? And what resources are available? I'm going to answer these questions over the next few slides. Best practices. So what should you keep on file, paper or electronic? You should always keep your grant. Dana, is it like 7 years we're supposed to keep all this stuff? Yeah, okay. So your proposal, you should keep a hard copy of it or electronic copy for at least 7 years. Any post-award, pre-award communication, any notes relating to award negotiation. So when you're dealing with an agency, you're going to be dealing with much more back and forth to negotiate that award. The award document you should keep, any setup information, basically any correspondence, any receipts, should be maintained for 7 years for any grant or any award. Carefully read all the related documents. I mean, as the PI in particular, you're the one that's responsible for this award, for this grant, so you should be aware of what you're agreeing to. The sponsor agency guidelines and regulations, read the conditions and terms for the proposal or the award. And many of these documents are available in Whisper and Wisdom. So if you haven't stored them, our university has done a better job at maintaining them in our electronic systems. DOM, a couple years back, Ron and Dana created something we call CAT, was this a central accounts tracking tool. and it's available to help keep important dates noted, attach, the documentation, the budgets, application, not the grant so much itself, but all the paperwork that goes back and forth afterwards, the award and, budgets or financial reports from RSP is all put in there. Okay, so we got CAT, periodic reconciliation to wisdom, that goes in there. In-person review by PI and administrator is done now that Dana's here, she's in the back. And clear and regular communication between PI, payroll, accounting, procurement, and research administration. So getting everybody involved, everybody updated, trying to make everybody aware as to the status of the grant, what's being done, and maintain communication. If an award is in process, request a project number in advance. So as I mentioned already, so if you have all your compliance issues already attended to, and as soon as we know you're funded, even if we don't have the notice of award, I own all the WISPR records, so you can contact me and we can put in an advance request, and so you can get started up to 90 days in advance. Request sufficient sub-accounts and edits, so if you're dealing with other people on campus, we can get them their account set up if we're giving them a special account, or we can expand edits and now give them access to the account up front so they can pay their personnel. Apply costs directly related to the award in a timely manner. If you've taken a trip, get your receipts in right away, get the trip posted against the accounts. People hold on to receipts, not so much anymore, but we used to be bad at this. And instead of submitting it the year the travel occurred, they would submit it late, and it just causes problems. So get everything in against the account as quickly as possible. And do not purchase large quantities of supplies or major equipment in the latter stages of the award. People have a lot of money to spend down, and so they say, okay, well, I don't want to do a no-cost extension. I have $100,000. I'm just going to stock up the lab. You'd be surprised how smart those accountants are at NIH. So all of a sudden, 2 months before the grant's going to end, you've bought all this tissue culture supplies. They call us on it, and we have to give back the money. So try and buy things at a better pace early on so you maintain that flow of purchasing. Document expenses properly. Again, keep your receipts. If there was an explanation or justification of something, make sure that is written down and secured someplace. If there's an exceptional circumstance, be sure approvals are in place. So if you got special permission from somebody, now we can pretty much order equipment without getting NIH's approval. But as far back as 2 years ago, we had to get special requests. So that would be done via email, and so you would want to get that in a paper file or in your CAT system or someplace so others could see that and know that it was approved. Again, review the terms of your award agreement to confirm that expenses are allowed. Then we use something called the P card. So as far as the P card, retain detailed receipts and forward to the site manager biweekly. Include clear and complete justification of the expense and how it's allocable. Monitor subawards and subaccounts. They are your responsibility. So in other words, you have other people on campus, know how they're spending the money, because you are the PI and you are responsible, or you're the administrator for that account and you're responsible. And then review effort and cost sharing commitments regularly. Dana, question. Do we allow them to put the P cards on the grant directly? I remember NIH didn't like that we had to use like a default number and then move it on each month, or do we allow that here?
Are you talking about the PAT tool where all the charges go to one account and you can change funding at the end of the month?
Right.
They can go directly onto
the federal account?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The federal award cannot be the default. Maybe that's what you're thinking.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there has to be a different default.
Okay.
But if the expense belongs to that federal grant, it can go on.
Okay. Because I remember the last NIH meeting I went to, they made a big deal about that, and I didn't know if okay. Okay, so things to remember. Having an unexpended funds is not an appropriate justification for extending a project. So now we're hinting at no cost extensions. So the reason you should ask or request a no cost extension is because the science is not complete or the data is not complete and you want to request a no cost extension. Just having $150,000 left in your account is not a reason to extend the grant and request a no-cost extension. It may be your reality, but that's not what you justify. So it always should be a scientific issue to extend the project after the 5 years. And people can have no money left and get a no-cost extension. You know, so you don't have to pay people, you don't have to get supplies on it or whatever. You can just make a request to NIH to extend that year. And you can't spend money you don't have. I know many PIs who feel that if they're applying for that next grant, that you don't want to close down the first 5 years. They feel that it's just bad to have that closed and reapply because you're not getting a continuation. So many PIs will have spent the money and put in for a no-cost extension just to write the competing continuation. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so as the grant end date approaches, you changed your MDS so no charges can hit the account automatically after your grant date. Update the P-card default so it doesn't flow back onto the grant. Identify new funding for personnel. You can apply for bridge funding if necessary. That's through the R&D committee or other agencies too. If you don't have money for your staff, you need to talk to your administrator to see if layoffs are needed. Work with your division administrator or financial administrator to start transferring off the account. And again, apply for a no-cost extension if necessary. So again, even if there's no money, but scientifically you want it to go on, you can still apply for that no-cost extension. How is post-award management handled and what tools are available to help me? Okay, so here is a print screen of RSP again, and you can see down on the right, you have effort reporting is eCert, and Whisper is our routing tool, and Cayuse is our grant tool, and we've covered all of those. So Wisdom is our accounting tool, and that you need to apply for if you want access. And now they have a new system called Wiser that they're developing that we're supposed to use, but I like Wisdom better personally. And then for transfers, there's a cost transfer tool that your administrator will use, and then something for the PI is called PI Financial Tools. So usually we do kind of a demo of these things, but because we're conversion, we're just going to do a print screen. And if you have questions about this, you can email Dana.
Do you want me? I mean, I don't know.
I just got a print screen of them, so I think for today this is fine. Okay.
We'll go with CAT.
Okay. So here is like the opening menu for Wisdom. And then once you pick an account, this is what it looks like. Gives you your basic rundown of accounts. Unfortunately, you're not seeing what they are on the side. Sorry about that. But it's salaries and fringe, and then I don't remember, but it gives you your total and your balance. And then this is a print screen of all your one PI's accounts that would look in PI tools, and then you'd click on it and it would kind of look like Wisdom and give you, what's expensive you spent and your balance and whatever. And then this is a print screen of CAT. You just want to describe CAT a little bit, and then at the end I'll let you do CAT.
Sure. So CAT is for DOM, but other places on campus can also use it. Okay, since we can't get in there, this brings in all the financial information from Wisdom as far as the award information, who the PI is, the dates. A couple things are really good with this is you can sort by your PI and get a list of all their accounts. So it's a little bit easier than Wisdom. It also has a routing function where instead of emailing back and forth, you could send an action item to someone that you want to do something. They'll get an email that says, please do this. I could send one to Ebenezer and say, please let me know about this project. It also has a place to attach things, which is really helpful because you can't, Wisdom is just a data warehouse. You can't change anything, you just view it. If you have an email that instructs you to do something or a receipt, you can upload it into CAT, and then we always have it. But there's a lot of functionality here. We want more people to use it. I'm more than happy to either train you or do demos like this so everybody's using it.
And what it's done for the Department of Medicine is we'd have people come and go, and we didn't know where things were left or it wasn't filed. I mean, here now, it's a management tool for multiple people. I mean, we can all sign in. We can see what files are attached. We have notes as to, you know, where the money came from, you know, what had to be done to, you know, update the award or whatever. So it's a great management tool. It has all the files built into it, all the budgets, the notices of award or whatever. So it's just a communication tool that's very helpful in a large system like we have.
Do you have to apply for that?
Pardon?
Do you have to apply for it like you do for Wisdom?
If you have a NetID, you can just send an email to, I guess we could use the ORS email or whatever, and we'll get you set up. It's done internally at DOM, so
Okay.
it takes like a day.
Okay.
All right, so now we're going to go into lecture 10, and this is other grant management systems. So these are all these little pieces that we've kind of alluded to and kind of making it a whole package of what you've got to do for a grant. So first of all, roles. So for NIH, you got the program officer. So he's responsible for the programmatic, scientific, and or technical aspects of the grant. So he is the person you communicate to. You know, this is what I'm interested in doing. Might you fund me? Very important. And then you have grant management specialist. They're responsible for ensuring that all business management actions are handled in a timely manner, both before and after the award. If you have any questions about completing the application or once you're funded, we go through them, and they provide guidance on the administrative and fiscal aspects of award. So there's certain things we don't even have to bother the PO about. So if we're looking to make little budget changes or making budget request issues, we can write to the grants management specialist, not the PO. If we're changing scope of work, then we would address to the PO. Then we also have our scientific review officer. So she is really the person we're dealing with up front when we're submitting the grant. The grant goes to the scientific review office. So they're responsible for the scientific technical review. They're there to make sure that you get a fair and unbiased evaluation. So they're leading that committee initially. They're the guy or gal that provides the accurate summaries of the evaluation. And they review applications initially for completeness and conformance with application requirements. So point of contact for applications during the review process. So you go to the SRO, not the PO, you know, while your grant is pending. And he's the guy or she's the guy that has the team with the rulers that's measuring, you know, if you got the right inches and, you know, characters per inch and all that stuff. And they do. And then on our side, the grantee institution, as I said, we're they being RSP is the actual recipient of the award. They're legally responsible for the proper conduct and execution of the grant. They provide fiscal management. They provide oversight on allocation decisions, and they are assuring compliance with NIH or other federal organizations. So, you know, all those human subjects and animals and stem cells and export control, all those things that we're addressing with a grant is their responsibility to make sure we're doing it right. And then we have the AOR, the Authorized Organizational Representative. We also call them the SO or signing official. They're designated the rep of the institution, and basically they're responsible. So our sign-off person for the university is Brenda Egan, and she signs off all the official correspondence to NIH, including grant applications, fiscal reports, assurances, and certifications. Now she may have a few other people that can sign, you know, with her or for her, but basically she's the name that goes down on everything. Okay, so what's the role of RSP? They provide institutional leadership and training and advising. They review, sign, and submit proposals. They negotiate, accept, and sign agreements, report on and invoice for all the charges, and charges must be recorded in the system SFS. They manage revenue. They match checks received in RSP directly with the correct deposits, and they deposit payments. So all the money, all that final flow goes through their office. What's the role of the dean's office? They provide general oversight for proposals, including budget review, review and approval of limited PI status, verify approval of regulatory compliance, approve cost sharing or matching, which again, we try not to do, and oversee financial management of awards. And what's the role of the principal investigator? They're supposed to identify the funding opportunities that they apply to. They should prepare the proposal, review and accept terms and conditions, manage the administrative and science of the award, and fulfill and certify effort commitments. And the role of the chair and the research administrators. We act as agents of the PI, so we help them with all these rules and guidance and making sure that we're doing it all right. We verify PI eligibility. So we look at the instructions of an agency or NIH to see if they can submit. Verify resources and facilities. I can't say that we do that much, but assure the work fits with the department's mission. Manage effort, that we do, I do. Be sure salary is charged correctly and avoid salary cost transfers. That's why we have so many administrators in the Department of Medicine, because there's so much of this that has to be tracked and properly done. So, each department or each division has 1 to 2, we have a division administrator and a financial administrator to help see that this stuff is done right. Okay, brings us to effort reporting already. So effort reporting, effort certification is the university's means of providing assurance to the sponsors. So we've written a grant and we said we're going to put in 15% effort. So the grant is funded, so we have to be sure that we're tracking that commitment and that it is being met. We have to verify the sources from which you were paid and your cost-shared effort on sponsored projects. And again, keep it to a minimum. So, effort should equal salary. I'll say that a couple times. Rule number 1, 100% is 100%. You can't have greater than 100%. This is starting to become a little blurred area, unfortunately. But even if you're including VA time and you have a leave of absence, you should still attempt to keep your effort at 100%. When I was at the University of Chicago, they would say to us, if you violate this rule, you go to jail. So, that's in my head. So I think it's something we got to watch. Rule number 2, any title above a postdoc should not be paid 100% in federal dollars. So faculty, scientists, lab managers, everybody does something that really shouldn't be paid off the grant. So say your lab manager is ordering supplies for all the grants. Well, she shouldn't be paid off of one grant because her responsibility involves multiple grants. Some of her effort needs to be on discretionary money so she can do all those grants. PIs, they're on IRB boards or something, or animal committees. That is not paid for on the grant. Therefore, they shouldn't be paid for 100%. So I really try to make sure that faculty never go above 90 or 95% paid on federal awards. So what is effort? Effort's the time you spend on an activity expressed as a percentage of the time you spend on your UW jobs. Your UW job duties may include, so it includes, so this is what you can do for the university, not what you can be paid for on federal grants. So any externally sponsored research, any university research that's not funded, instruction and university-supported academic effort, such as teaching, administration, so your role as a chair or program director or dean, Service on institutional committees, like I mentioned, the IRB, et cetera. Effort expended on preparing proposals for new or continuing sponsored projects. I've brought this one up in budgeting. I got dinged on this. This is real. So you can't be paid on the current grant working on the next one. That's the PI, that's the lab manager, that's the technicians. It's just a rule for NIH that, you know, working on another grant can't be paid for off of federal funds. So you have to use discretionary funding for that. Lost my place. Activities related to pursuing intellectual property, public service, any outreach activities, and paid absences like vacation time and sick leave or whatever are all part of your UW package. Things that are not part of being work for UW, consulting outside the UW, clinical activities, that should be compensated by the foundation dollars. VA activities, you should be paid for the VA, from the VA for VA time. Advisory activities for sponsors, such as service on an NIH study section. You should be like taking vacation time or whatever when you are going to NIH. Peer review of manuscripts, you know, whether they compensate you or not, it's not part of your UW time. Leadership in professional societies, volunteer or public service work, lectures or presentations for where you are paid. So if a drug company is paying you to give a talk, that is not time that you're working for UW. Activities over and above or separate from your assigned responsibilities in your primary position, such as being an editor. So all of these are roles not part of your UW job. So activities that can be allocated to sponsored projects. So what can be paid for? What is part of your role from that federal grant? Directing or participating in your research, of course. Providing clinical patient care to human research subjects. So for people doing a clinical trial or clinical research, seeing those patients are should be paid off the grant. Writing a progress report, that is considered part of your grant time. Holding a meeting with lab staff, okay, that makes sense. Activities contributing to and intimately related to work under the agreement include going to seminars, consulting with your colleagues, delivering special lectures about your research, attending a scientific conference, reading scientific journals. So you're in bed reading that journal, you're still at work. Monitoring grad students on the specific research project. And I always like to add my own, which is thinking about your science in the shower. So, you know, that's still UW time. Activities not considered to be funded off the grant. Again, writing that next proposal, writing the subsequent grant you should not be paid from the current grant. Developing data to support the proposal, or writing, editing, and submitting the proposal. So anything to do with the new grant, any preliminary data, whatever, should not be paid for off the current grant. Administration, so if you're a department chair or a dean, that does not get paid from grant money. If you're teaching, that is not part of your grant money. Clinical activity, as mentioned, does not get paid from the grant. The committee time, any course development, again, that's teaching, and writing textbook chapters are not part of federal funding. So effort basics. Effort is your work on a project, whether the sponsor pays your salary or not. When you write yourself into a grant, you are committing effort. So if you say, I'm going to give you 15% or 20% effort, that's your commitment. So once it's funded, you should be paid that 15 or 20%. And again, effort equals salary. So whose effort must be certified? All faculty, staff, you know, postdocs or whatever. So if part of their salary is paid off of a federal grant or any sponsored project, then that effort needs to be certified at that level. And if you expend committed effort on a sponsored project, even though no part of their salary is charged to the project. So if somebody put on 10% commitment, you know, they should say it was cost shared. But again, we don't like to do that. Certification must reasonably reflect all the effort for all the activities. Now, you know, doctors don't go punching time cards, so I mean, we don't really follow them around with little notebooks saying, you know, how many hours a week do you work? You know, how many hours were you in your office, or were you, you know, in the lab or whatever. So we have to be professional about this, and if we make a commitment, I mean, it's not going to all be the same week to week and whatever. We just need an honest assessment for effort reporting. And it's also not based on a 40-hour work week. The university, actually the School of Medicine, considers our work week 50 hours, not for staff, but for faculty. And so we try and base everything on a 50-hour work week. But again, it's all, you know, if they're off at meetings and they're off in clinic and whatever, it's very hard to, you know, be exact. So we just try and be professional about it. That all said, if you reduce your effort, paid or unpaid, on a federal grant by more than 25%, you need agency approval. So if you were at 20% and you want to go down to 14%, that's more than 25%. So then you would have to write a letter to the PO and give them a reason why you need to reduce your effort. And then we will update our system for your effort now being 14% instead of 25. So, and we do track this, so it's important that we do the paperwork. Okay, so this is the effort reporting and certification page. So you just go to where it's eCert login and click on it and sign in, and you get something that looks like this. I didn't want to do any difficult one. Sometimes they show all the hard ones, and it's just not worth it. So I can help anybody at any time, but basically it shows you got a commitment there. This person had 100% commitment on the grant. She was paid 100%, so it's no biggie to know to put in 100%, 0 for non-sponsored, and everything's green to go, so she can click the certify button at the bottom. So that's essentially effort. Any questions about effort? Yep.
So when you're saying a change of 25% or more, is that 25% of 100, or in terms of like a difference in percentages, or is it like if you reduce?
25% of 20. So if your effort is currently 20%, you know, what's 25% of 20? 5. So if you go over 5%, then you would have to send in a letter. Okay, all the other little things. Biosketches. I think I jumped over biosketches week 2 or 3. And so, okay, so first is the project role. So what is the person's role on the project? I've brought this up before, so they could be just listed as staff. They could be a co-I or a collaborator, which those two things mean the same for NIH. But the newer term that they've coined is other significant contributor. So a person from in-house cannot be a consultant. So if you want somebody and not pay them, you have to use other significant contributor. So that's the thing I'm trying to sell here, and I don't think I wrote it very well. So they can be listed as key personnel, or you can include their biosketch and list them as an other significant contributor. Don't pad the biosketches. We have some people that just feel that all these people in their department are experts, so they want to put all 10 biosketches in there. It really doesn't look good, especially for somebody who's junior and trying to get their first R01. A person reading that and seeing all those biosketches are going to say they're not confident. They don't feel, you know, strongly about, you know, being an independent researcher. So you actually have to put biosketches in there in a limited fashion. So, you know, 1 or 2 that are actually maybe collaborating with you, 1 that might be mentoring you or, you know, advising you or whatever, but don't throw everything, you know, you can into biosketches. Now we have to put a URL link in there to show all the published work because they're wanting limited or less information on a biosketch. So back in 2015, they changed the whole format, and so it went into a section A, which was a personal statement. So you write a large paragraph of kind of your history and background and why you're suited to do this. And then you have section B, which are now contributions to science. There's a limit of 5, and each can only have 4 publications. So that's actually important, because if you have more than 4 publications, you're considered non-compliant, and they can actually refuse the grant for that reason alone. So we have to be careful with those. And then we need to add PMC ID numbers, which I'll go over in a minute. That became a rule, and I'll tell you what those are. And now there's a 5-page limit. So this is the example that NIH has on the website. So you have to leave the headers as headers. Sometimes people will want to make their own form of this. People will criticize that in their review, so it's best to use this form as it is, and that's it. Just use the form. And then you do your personal statement, and then you have honors and positions and honors that you list, and then you do your contributions to science, and like I said, it's a little paragraph with at max 4 references. So here we see 2 and 3. He's got 3 references for one section and 4 for another. And then section D then is research support. And on a BioSketch, it's ongoing and completed. And then I'm going to show you the other support page, which is a little different, but they overlap. And on this page, you'll see there's no amounts here, and there's no effort here. So people will try and combine the forms into one and put on the amounts and the effort and whatever, and NIH, again, doesn't like that. They want it to be compliant with their rules, and the rules are to have this format, and it's ongoing and completed. So this is the other support page. So if you've got a good score and NIH wants to look at your information a little further, and they're going to send you to the other committee, then they're going to ask you for other support page with something called just in time that I'm going to go over in a minute. So this is the format, and it just changed just recently a little bit. So you've got the title of the grant, the institute that's funding it, you've got the date range, and now on the right there you have the effort that you committed to this grant. And we were putting on here annual direct cost until now, and now they want the whole big number. They want the total cost of the grant on this information and not the direct cost. And so this is active and pending. So the other page showed you, I'm blanking, sorry. Ongoing and active sections are going to be identical, except here you're adding dollars and effort. Now we're not doing old grants, we're doing pending. They want the future. What have you submitted? What potentially could be coming your way? And then you're supposed to do overlap. So how is the current grant that you're submitting this this other support page to, does it overlap with anything that's shown here? And if it is, you would have to write a little paragraph of how they overlap and what would you do if they're both funded. So PMC ID numbers. So this became a rule in 2008. It's public access policy ensures that the public has access to published results. So you actually apply for this. It says it's going to go into Pub Central, and you get a number that goes in after your references that shows you're compliant. Let's see if these are. C in the middle on C here, that's a PMC ID number. So that's, even though it was 2007, it's showing that they registered with Pub Central. So those have to be on there, and fortunately we have help for this. So Pub Central is basically an archive, and they have GeneBank and PubChem and whatever, but all of these have to be registered, and each division did have somebody trained that could do this for you, but they've hired somebody at the library, Ryan, now, and he's very good at this stuff. So if you're about to publish or you have published, if we contact him, he will help get this done for you. So let your PIs know that. And then publications now need to be loaded into my NCBI tool, and I forgot to put the instructions at the end. I will email those out. And this way, when you go to do this or your progress report, they automatically upload. So all publications need to be going into My NCBI. Okay, we've talked about ERA Commons, and this is just to remind you that it's important you get a ID, and if you're asked for just in time, that will be put in the Commons account. When you get your notice of award, it's uploaded into the Commons account. When you submit a no-cost extension, you basically upload it into your Commons account, and then RSP will submit. And your progress reports, well, actually progress reports go in a RPPR system, but the final one gets uploaded into Commons and gets submitted by RSP. So it's an important communication tool between us and NIH. So just in time, what is just in time? So you wrote the grant, you got a good score. Now you're getting an email from the PO that says, you know, send me these things, we're considering your grant for funding. So there's an automatic one that goes out to RSP just because you got a score below 50. But that doesn't mean you have a chance for being funded. So we don't submit to that one. So RSP will get a just-in-time notice, and the first one we ignore. And then the second one is an email that looks something like this, that goes directly to the PI, and RSP gets a copy, but it says, you know, they want current other support. It should look like this, and they give you links to the samples. And then, you know, they want to know what your effort is and who are your key people, and we want other support for your key people. And then it says, if you have any of these, if you have IRB, if you have human subjects, if you have stem cells, so any of these things need to be loaded into or submitted with your just-in-time, and we need this before we'll give you a notice of award. So it's basically what this letter's saying.
Ben, how many people that get just in time get awarded? Is it almost everybody or
This letter, not the first one?
the second one?
Oh, I'd say 95%. It's not quite 100, but it's pretty close. Okay, and so this is showing you My NCBI, where, you know, you go in and get your publications loaded. And then you have to do annual progress reports, and then at the very end you do a final report. So it's done in the RPPR system. It's due 45 days prior to the next budget. It saves time versus, you know, just doing a paper version and uploading it. It needs to be validated before routing. When routing, it comes to me first, and then I send it to Debbie in the School of Medicine. And I try and catch a lot of the mistakes and a lot of the information that wasn't put in. In fact, I probably do half of these with the PIs. It's just they do it once a year, and they're just not familiar with the system. So, and publications, again, are no longer added in Commons. You have to do it in My NCBI. I just want to write that down to send that handout, guys. Just a minute. Okay. And I used to have screenshots for all this because of time today. I took out all these extra screens. But there's a cover page, an accomplishments page, products, participants, impacts, and changes. And if it's an R1, you don't have to do a budget. Big programs, we have to put budgets in. Basically, cover page is filled in. Accomplishments, you have a 2-page scientific report that gets uploaded in Section B. And then there's Section D that says, what are you going to do next year? That is really what a progress report is. And then the rest of this is all fluff. So you have to go through products, you know, did you discover anything? You know, is anything changed? Are you still doing animals? You know, participants, then you log in, who's on the grant for how much effort. And impact is just something you do at the end. Did you have any changes? Is your NOA changed, you know, and basically you go through and go, no, 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 and you get the thing submitted. So it's not really a big deal. So this is what it looks like to get it started in ERA Commons. So this is the RPPR menu. And this is the one page I want to show people because this is your participants page, and people for somehow miss that thing that's circled is the individual's primary affiliation with a foreign organization. So if you fill in all the boxes And if you don't check yes or no, and then you hit add new, nothing happens. It just sits there, and you keep doing it, and you can't understand why, because there's no asterisk there. But if you don't check yes or no for foreign affiliation, it just doesn't add anything. So I wanted to point that out if anybody does one of these. Okay, so requesting a no-cost extension. We've talked about this a little bit already. So NIH has a template available. They kind of tell you how to do it. Basically, it's a letter that needs to be written. It's very formulaic. You put that in Whisper. We route it over. As I said, the first one is automatic. RSP can just, change your end date in the system. But you should have a more detailed letter going to NIH if you want a second one. So this is a sample of the first letter. Like I said, here's the form. It's right off the RSP website. You just put in your grant number, your PI's name, the title, the account numbers, the MSN number, and then you go through and say, I'd like to extend it to, like a year from now. This is why. And, efforts been fulfilled, so we're going to reduce everybody's effort to near nothing. Our plans are to do this and this. Thank you very much. So not a big deal. A second letter would be addressed to the PO at NIH and not to RSP. Put in a little bit more detail why you need that second one, and if there's money left over, really explain why there's money left over and what you're going to do with it. And then RSP will send that out, goes through a Whisper record as well, and then we wait to hear back from NIH to find out if we can get that second no-cost extension. I've seen as many as 3. I wouldn't push it after that. Okay, so we get faculty that come here from other universities, and they've been funded already. So PA 18590 is the current number for transferring a grant. So what we actually have to do is put in the same grant. It's basically the same grant with just like a face page that's different, resources is different, their bio sketch would be different. So, we re-upload the old grant with just special sections reflecting our university and of course a new budget. But we can't do any of this unless we have a relinquishing statement. A relinquishing statement comes from the other university, from where the PI is at now, to us, and it tells us how much money we have to spend. So it looks something like this. And, it could be as little as 2 weeks after the PI left that we can get this and get it all in, or it can take 6 months, unfortunately. The university used to let us put in for an advance account because the PI already had a funded grant, so we would let them start spending their money here. But because of all the compliance issues, if they get compliances quickly, we can still do that. But otherwise, I used to get people money 2 weeks once they got here. It's just getting harder to do. So now the university wants the relinquishing statement before they'll let the PI here start spending money. So that's how you transfer a grant. And so basically go into Cayuse and just put all the parts in like we've already talked about, but it's contingent on this. So it includes face page, budget pages, biographical sketch, a statement indicating whether the research plans have changed. So basically, if nothing's changed, you just load it in the old ones and you write a cover letter saying nothing's changed. Scope of work is going to stay the same, just a new university, but you'll have a new resources page and a new checklist. And then, of course, you got to redo the IRB or the ACUC or whatever. And then closeout. What's closeout? It's the process to finalize all the sponsored requirement. It's due 90 days after the grant is expired. We got some new rules that we call UGG a couple years ago, and we used to let this go on and on and on. We can't do that anymore. We can actually jeopardize future grants, so they want it in 90 days, and we get it there pretty close to that most of the time. So what does a closeout need? So first, internally through CAT, emails go out, and the financial people and or Dana work with the PIs to make sure effort reporting's done and the money's all spent and the accounts close at 0 or a reasonable number that they can close out at. and that, you know, all the bills from the animal facility and whatever are posted. So all those kind of things are all done and cleaned up. And then once, what do you give to RSP to say it's done on your end?
Well, in CAT we do that, but when it gets close to the end, within those 90 days, RSP is supposed to send you a computational email. And they've already looked at the expenses and maybe found some things they don't think are allowable, but you can prove to them if they are. But they'll find things that you might need to look at as you prepare. When we in the department have done everything we are supposed to, we've gotten rid of the encumbrances, it's in balance, we're good to go. There's a function in CAT to say, tell RSP this project, that this award is ready to close. And it goes directly to the RSP accountant. That's telling them that we've looked at this, we've done the review, now it's in their court to submit that.
And so then the RSP is set up then to do the financial report and get that submitted, and that's being done concomitantly as the PI is doing the final progress report, and then he has to do something called a final invention statement. For many, they don't have inventions necessarily, so you just go in and say no and sign it off, and that's done. And you need another 2-page progress report, basically, and then that's done. For the PIs that do have inventions, it takes a little bit more time because you've got to make sure that their titles and whatever match what had been set up within the university, but otherwise it's not a big deal, and all of this should be done within 90 days. So I'm not sure we get that done as well as we should, but we try. This is a letter reminding a PI that they've got to do their final report. They don't do these so much anymore, but okay. Just real quick. So what have we learned in this class so far? All right, we learned about NIH and the website and all the institutions and how much information is on the websites. We learned all kinds of how to submit a grant and how to set it up and how to review and apply and whatever. And this is the page at NIH that has lots of suggestions and help. Writing a grant takes time. It takes planning, and it shouldn't start weeks before the deadline. It should start months before the deadline. So this is my reminder to put in time in writing your grant. So identify your need or your problem, your idea for a solution, your commitment to the process, and develop your grant writing skills. Whether it's an agency or NIH, the basic components are title, abstract, budget, specific aims, and research strategy. Abstract summary, it's really important, should be in plain English, and don't write it at the last minute. Put effort into it. Specific aims should include your research objectives, be hypothesis-based, be obtainable within the proposed framework, and be well-focused rather than broad. Grab your reader, and it's limited to 1 page. You should do your opening paragraph, your long-range goals, 3 to 4 aims at most, and your impact paragraph. How is this innovative? Research strategy. What do you intend to do? Why is the work important? What has already been done? And how are you going to do this work? 12 pages for an R01 and only 6 pages for an R21 or R03. Budget strategy. Be reasonable. Try and estimate what you really need to do the job. Reviewers are smart. They're looking for reasonable cost, and they're going to compare you with other grants. Reviewers will look at the person months to see if you've got reasonable amount of staff to do the work, and significant over or under budgeting may indicate that you really don't understand your own scope of work or what it will take. Direct costs are what's going to be spent on the program. Indirect cost is currently 55 going to 55.5. Modular budgets are below 250, and you need a detailed budget over 250. Why do a budget justification? This explains your cost. It answers questions to the reviewers about how you calculated your cost. It indicates the base salaries and any yearly increases for your staff and faculty, and it should reflect the objectives of the project. Again, we went over the bio sketch. I'm not going to belabor it. We went over the other support page. We talked about pre-award costs, so you can get an advance account and start 90 days before the grant really starts. So if you have expenses before, the award's in, we can cover them. If you need greater than 90 days, you would have to get the PO approval for that. And there's no time limit for non-competing awards. Costs need to be allowable and managed carefully. We've talked about account setup. What's the bottom line? A strong idea, strong science, and strong application. And I've sent emails about the grant writing course. I hope you guys are interested and are signing up. And so I'll give Dana a few minutes to do. Kat?
to like determine how many months somebody worked on the grant fair progress report? Or what tool would be helpful to like calculate that month quantity?
For effort reporting?
For the section of the, RPPR that, the participants.
Well, that's for a year.
Mhm. But you're submitting it before the year is up, right? So,
Oh, I usually don't do a major calculation. I just, if you're going in at 10 months and you see they've been paid 10% for 10 months, I just assume the last two is gonna be 10, so I would just put 10 in the system.
okay.
I don't do projection, I mean, you know, unless you know that they're not gonna be paid or whatever, then I would, you know, say 10 months paid at 10%, that's 100 divided by 12 and report 9 or something, you know. But we don't really have a projection for effort.
Okay, I'm done. Unless you have any questions, or you want additional training, or you want to get access to any of these apps that we have to help manage the finances. Thank you.